Hello, family. Welcome to today's episode. Today's episode, we have a phenomenal guest, a good personal friend of mine who is a business partner and a real estate investor, goes by the name of Dagmawi Tesfaye. Dagmawi, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you, Nate.
Well, I'm really excited about this show because we're going to be talking about tips on buying your first rental property. This is a episode I know that's going to bring a lot of value to many of our audiences. You have been very instrumental into my personal life, so I want to give you your flowers and say thank you. You definitely have been responsible for helping me buy my first two properties in real estate with advice and tips. So I'm very thankful for that. And what I'm really excited about today is that we're taking our conversations that we usually have offline, online, for many people to witness and experience and learn a lot about buying rental properties. So this is going to be a great episode. I'm really excited.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely we've been talking a lot outside of offline a lot of this the past couple of years. So definitely I would love to continue sharing that with audience that we have.
Definitely. So what got you into wanting to buy rental property?
So always been interested in investing in general. So always been kind of looking at between stock markets and real estate. So just doing the comparisons that I find in real estate for me is a little bit tangible. It's something that I can see, something that I can add value. Stock market is a little bit different for me. So I started looking at properties and how to invest in a certain areas and learn how to add value into a property. So currently, I'm in Texas, so that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, one thing I do love about you is that you're not just, a great real estate investor, but you're just an amazing overall good human that has a passion to not just better your life, but your family's life and also your community. So you're someone that has rental property, not just in the Texas area, but also in Ethiopia. And I'm excited about the journey and the things you're going to be doing out there a lot, moving forward. But tell me a little bit about the property you have in Texas. We actually have a clip that I wanted to share with the audience in just a bit. But you have a fourplex, 4-unit rental property in Texas, and that you've also renovated, right?
Yeah, so I started out buying this back in 2019. It was a good market. Right now a little bit hot on the market when it comes to multi-units. So I bought it in a good time. So the property when I bought it, it was very undervalued. So there was an opportunity for me to get in and work on the property and so increase value. And so now currently 4 of those units has been upgraded. Getting into it originally around the area, there was as far as the rental, it was lower. And so I had to do some kind of comparison to make that property go higher level as far as rental. And so I've done a little bit of research in the area. And so we can talk about more detail as we go.
Definitely. So there's one particular unit that you just got renovated. We actually have a clip of that. So take a look.
I set out on that winding road that autumn day when you 6 months ago. Packed my bags and got on that train. Shook off the dust as I drove away. This world, she ain't for the weary kind. A distant land where dreams they come to die. A few travel there, a few who know, who live to tell of that winding road. Only the lost become found. You gain your life when you're laying down. Only the fool is born to fight. The few who live only learn to die. Well, Urchi comes with a price, I'm told. She'll either free your heart or she'll steal your soul. But in the valley of the shadow of the cross, you'll find a little brokenness bid you come alive. Only the darkness can turn to dawn. I may be weak, but your love is strong. Only the blind need eyes to see. Only the captive can be set free.
Welcome back, family. We are back with Dagmawi Tesfaye, a good personal friend of mine, business partner, and real estate investor. And today we are talking about tips on buying your first rental property. So let's just start off with the very beginning, right? You're looking for a brand new rental property, and you want to know where to start. Let's start with buying. What do you look for within your buying strategy? I know that there is a principle called BRRRR that you've told me about, and that's been very beneficial for me. And normally it's used for flipping, but it can also be utilized for rental property. But kind of what do you look like? What does the BRRRR, tell us a little bit about what the BRRRR strategy stands for and what you look for when you're looking for your first buy.
So yeah, before I talk about more the BRRRR strategy, I'll talk about like what I look for when I buy a property. So typically is, look for, is it, what kind of income is coming in that community as far as, who's building in that community. Also the property that you buy specifically, you have to know if it cash flows. And just for those of you who probably don't know what cash flow is, just the way it works is that you take on a particular property, that's how much it's producing, and you subtract all the costs, and then whatever is left is pretty much your cash flow. And so you pretty much take that in value and then maybe multiply it by 12, which is to give you 12 months. Yeah. So once you have it 12 months, then that will give you a value you will cash on the end of the year. And then if you divide that by the amount of money you invested on there, then you get your ROI, which is your investment return. So knowing that will tell you if that property is the right property to invest in specifically.
Now, what's a healthy ROI, let's say, for a year of one property investment?
So typically when you get into any property, is actually the ROI is a lot lower because you're investing a lot more. As you go further, pretty much your return would be infinite sometimes. So typically, it depends on which type of property you get in, because there's something called Class A, Class B, Class C. But typically, when there are Class C or Class D, which is like more property that needs more little bit of work, those ROI usually is higher. But normally, anything higher than 8% is considered to be good. So I look for that as far as if the property is actually going to cash flow. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, now tell us a little bit about the BRRRR strategy.
So now once you get into the property, now it's time to be able to work on through the property. So the BRRRR strategy is pretty much you buy, you rehab, you rent, and then you refinance.
Right.
You repeat the same process. So that's pretty much you do is, but typically this is used for flipping because most people will buy in a property and then, once they buy it, they will try rehab it quickly and then they will rent it or refinance it and then get out of the deal and repeat the same process.
Now, what platforms or resources do you use when you're looking for your first buy? I know there is, Zillow, there is bankrate.com. What kind of platforms or resources you think would be useful when you're looking to buy your first rental property?
So when you buy a first property, again, is learning how much is property's worth, and then taking that number and knowing if the rental value is good. So talking about the bankrate.com, pretty much you're going in there to see how much is that property will be costing you versus how much is rent is coming in. Now, typical, a lot of the property that I look for is under MLS. Now, there is other offline markets they come in, but typically those are cash. They are required cash only. But yeah, so MLS is basically what I look for.
Okay. And so you look at what the property value is worth. I mean, how much it's going to cost you, and then what other numbers kind of contribute into if this is a good buy for rental property? What else do you kind of calculate to look at if this is going to provide you with healthy cash flow?
Got it. So typically, again, anything between $100,000 to $500,000 homes, typically, if you take in 1% of that particular property, so example of, let's say if you choose $300,000 home, then you should expect around $3,000 of a return as far as your, if you're not in that area, then most likely you won't cash flow again. But in order for something to cash flow, you have to specifically go in detail, which is, as I said, or like earlier, you take on how much you're going to bring in minus all the costs. Some of the costs would be, for example, maintenance as far as landscape.
Right.
It can also be your normal maintenance as far as something water breaking down, electrical issue, and then also subtracting any kind of fee as far as if you're going to manage the property or you're going to have somebody else manage it. That's something you can also subtract. Of course, your mortgage. And I think that's pretty much it.
Perhaps like an HOA, if that's
Yeah. I don't recommend anybody buying HOA for those multi-units, but that would be something if you have one. HOA, and also if you have certain like city fee, like it depends on some of the fees that you have. So you calculate all your cost minus your from whatever you get in. And then whatever the amount of money you receive is pretty much your cash flow for that particular month.
I see.
Yeah.
All right. So you identify a property, the numbers look good. You're looking to take that next step in making a purchase. So what does that next step look like for an individual that finds a great property and is looking to either put a bid down or make that purchase? What does that next step look like?
So once they identify with that property, what they want, then the next step is going through, through the loaning process. And then in that process also, before even getting to the loan process, negotiating with the seller, because any property you buy is about how you buy it. That's the main part of buying a property is actually when you get into the deal is where you have to make the best out of it.
So what does a good deal look like for you? How do you like to negotiate for multi-unit properties?
So number one thing you have to make sure is, and when you do the inspection, you cannot, this is something that I tell everyone, is that when it comes to inspection, don't take any shortcut. You have to go through the full process. Even if it costs you a little bit more, go for it, because that details that you find in the inspection can also help you for a negotiation on the table. So like I'll give you an example of the deal that I had. So with the seller, I was able to negotiate with him to pay pretty much majority of my renovation that I'm doing right now. Not only he paid me cash for it, but also reduced some of how much the property was costing. So, and then I also having someone, maybe like a real estate agent or someone, an expert that can help you to know how much thing will cost. So when you go back and negotiating with the seller, you kind of have like evidence of here's the list of things that I need to fix.
Right, right. So you use the inspection process to kind of leverage negotiations,
Yep.
particularly like lower the cost for you or figure out how you can like put less money down as much as possible so you can have more cash flow to invest in other areas, right?
Yep, that's pretty much it. But one thing that I need to point out is when I specifically looked at this particular property, I kind of saw in the area that the rent was going low, and I had to ask myself a question: why was this rent lower than the area? It's because it was mismanaged. Somebody didn't really manage the property well, not because I had any issue. So sometimes you might have to do a little bit of research, knowing like how you're able to increase the value for that particular property.
And you would get that research from comps.
Yeah, so you will get that research. Yeah, so you would do is, again, when I looked at this particular property, I looked at the area, how much rent was going.
Where do you
And
get this
then
information for the odd, for many that may not know? Where do you get that information?
there's different websites as far as putting knowing your rent. So pretend like you're gonna go rent somewhere in that area, and pretty much it will give you similar rent values. Like you have, like if you go to a different website, like on Google, type in you want to rent in, let's just say
Like a zip code?
zip code, and find out specifically what is renting. And typically you look at it based on square footage and also a bedroom size. Like you have 2 bedroom, three bedroom, that determines well how much is renting. And then you take that number and make sure it was within the same area code. That gives you an idea of how much is something's renting.
Okay, break that down a little further. So you look at square footage of a bedroom or the square footage of the entire property, and then what do you do with that number?
So square footage of the property. So when you compare 3 bedroom of a specific like place versus another one, you got to make sure you somehow make sure the square footage is similar. Might
Okay,
not be exact, it's similar, but typically you just look at bedroom. So if you have 3 bedroom, you want to compare that with 3 bedroom. If it's 2 bedroom, you want to compare it 2 bedroom. And the same thing with the bathrooms. Those are typically what gives it the value of rent.
and can the comps report that you get from like a real estate agent tell you how recent a certain property in that area was rented out?
Usually I never ask for comps for rent. I ask for comps for to whatever I'm ready to buy a property. I definitely want to see in the area how much this property are selling. So when I do go back to the seller, I want to be able to put a right offer because I don't want to go over. Also, I don't want to go under.
Right.
Then if I go under, then I'm not going to get the deal. If I go over, then I didn't buy a good deal.
Right. Okay. So let's say you've identified a property, you've gotten the bid, and you've put down money, you've gotten that accepted. Now, what are the first things that you look at in order to raise the value of a multi-unit property or just a unit?
So typically, the inspection that you will get that you have done, that will give you a lot of good idea where you can increase value. A lot of time people just look at what's the visual, but there's also other things that the inspection brings in. But mostly, of course, when it comes to increasing value of a rent, it's more the visual. So like a simple thing is changing carpets, putting in paint. If you have yard, working on a fence, put a grass, or do a little bit landscaping.
More
So
aesthetic look and appeal.
yeah, aesthetic appeal. Yeah, that's pretty much what you look for. But before you do any renovation, you don't want to do under renovation or over renovation. So that's why you want to be able to look at that area as far as the rental and identify if something is increasing, like as far as it was a higher rate of rent, you need to know why that was renting. So let's just say if they upgraded the kitchen, then maybe your kitchen needs to look similar to that kitchen. Or you don't upgrade something just because you feel like to upgrade. You upgrade it based on what the market is looking for.
Yeah, I think that's so important because many of us have our own ideas of what we think would raise value of a particular property, but it's relative to what's happening within that market and that area, right?
Yeah.
Based off what and you want to be able to be within competition and put your money in the right places. And I love that you mentioned that because yeah, I think that's well-deserved research to look at. So okay, now that makes sense. So then you identify the property, you bought it, you had the loan, everything went through, you're looking at, let's say your inspection went well, the basics are done, electricity, foundation, everything is good. And then you're looking at raising the value based off what you see of other properties within the market of, where you need to place your money. So you said floors would be a good move. You look at maybe fences out, outside the garden or the grass, just making sure everything aesthetically is looking up to par for rental value. And then at that point, how do you know? And then I think we talked about this as well, the idea of looking at what other places are renting within the area, right? And then you kind of use that number to kind of, you can either go above a little bit because you made those renovations, or you keep it around that same if it's standard with other rental properties, right?
Yeah, so I try not to go over, I try not to go under, try to keep it the same thing. So even my renovation, based on the way I set up my budget, is based on knowing what the area is. So once I identify that area specifically and knowing the rent, and I work backward. So the way it works is example, let's just say if I originally picked it up at $1,000 rent, now in the area is let's say, I don't know, 1,500. So there's $500 increase in rent potential. So what I do is I take that 500 and I multiply it by 24 months, because usually I do not want to put into something that I'm not going to pick it up within 2 years. That's just my strategy around it. I don't invest in anything that I'm not going to pick it up within 2 years.
What do you mean not pick it up?
Meaning like, because anything you invest, you're not going to get it right away.
So
Take
ROI?
Yeah, you can say ROI, but it's just your original investment is already done, but you're going to continue investing. So there's $500 multiplied by 24. That amount is what I would potentially invest in renovating the space. I'm not going to go beyond that, because if I'm going to increase my rent 500, that means is after 2 years is where I'm going to start actually, benefiting from that renovation.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So, okay, so you're using whatever profit margin you're having, within, those that monthly, you're times it by by 24, right? Because that's 2 years. And then you're using that profit margin to reinvest into renovation, or at least trying to get the same amount of value that you put in for renovation. And then after those 2 years are over, that's when you're actually reaping the benefits of your ROI, your profit that you're really just generating and moving forward, right?
Yeah. Again, what I'm saying is that's my maximum. Usually I try to go lower so I can start getting the deal a lot earlier. It depends on how much of work is that particular property needed. But imagine if you put in, I don't know, if you put in 500 and you do it for 5 years, you can invest in that much money to fix, but you're not going to see that money for 5 years. So you kind of have to be a little bit wise as far as in how you put your money and where you put it. Because you are increasing the value of that property, but if you're not looking to sell it right away, the tenants are going to move in, they're going to depreciate the space.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of questions, follow-up questions I have, but one question is, what do you define as a good area for rental properties? I know you do your own due diligence with research, but, are there any indicators that you look at, within, different areas that kind of point you in the right direction to make you feel comfortable? Okay, this is a good place to invest in rental property versus another place?
So when you look at property, and also you have to know why you're investing it for. So you're investing it for cash flow purpose, or you investing it for, property increasing over time, you know. So it depends on why you're doing it for. But for me specifically, I'm specifically going after for cash flow. So I cannot be investing in a place where pretty much class A, class B environment, which is very high class environments, or it could be suburb, not more close to a downtown area. Also, look at other companies that are already investing in the area. I mean, you don't have to do the research; they're already investing money. A good example you can look at: is there a Target nearby? Is there a Walmart nearby? Those companies are already doing their own money research, so it kind of you can follow them technically. Of course, look for good schools. Look for if the area has a lot of crime or not. Um, but yeah, so everything is you just do your research as if you would be okay to live in the area, and then go ahead and invest there.
Okay. And then how do you find good renters? Because that's always a big challenge with someone buying a property, finding, what do you look for for a good tenant? And how do you go about that process?
Yeah, so that is probably the most difficult part when it comes to rental property. Um, you know, is tenants can some tenants will take care of your property and some tenants will abuse your property. So as if you don't choose them right, and then you'll have a problem. So first thing is, when you go through the screening process, be patient because sometimes something can be on the market for a while, and that you might be losing a little bit of money, but it is worth it. You want to make sure you go through the filtering process. I have a company that they pretty much take care of this portion of it. Um, so when I first pretty much bought the property, I had certain tenants that I did not appreciate of how they kept the property, but I already knew when I was getting to the deal. Um, and also, just generally speaking, when something is renting out like undervalued, that means that somebody's not going to take it. They're not going to take care of the property because they don't appreciate it. But once you give it the aesthetic look, all that stuff, people start taking care of the property. So that's pretty much it.
All right. What are your thoughts on getting a property manager versus doing your own property management yourself?
Yeah, so I pretty much managed the property for almost a year in the beginning, while again, I want to get myself into the process just so I can understand. It is a little bit intimidating when you get into it, definitely. Because tenants coming in, they've been living there for a long time. Now you're just coming in as a new person and pretty much asking them to do certain things when they're not doing. It can be very intimidating, but definitely read about what you're doing. Um, but as far as which one do you recommend? For me, I recommend having property management. Here is the reason why. For me, I travel frequently for my work, and also I got something going on back home. So because of it, and also that is not my expertise. What I mean? Sometimes it's good to know what you're good at, what you're not good at. So I feel like I'm good at as far as analyzing property, maybe even fixing it up, but not managing the full thing. So I suggest, if you're more a handy person, then maybe having management company to manage it. Now, said that, one thing I usually try to do is I negotiate with the property management where they can manage everything else except I don't let them manage when it comes to maintenance. The reason is because that's where a lot of the cash will start coming out of your pockets. So you can be working all this time if you don't control that. So I have my own separate person. Every time there's an issue that comes in, that request comes to me, and then I have someone actually go out there and look at it. But before even he does, sometimes I might even drive to the property to look at it myself to see if I can actually do it myself. Because I'm in still a starting process where I want to get more hands on. I want to see what's going on. But that's something I would definitely recommend.
Yeah, I think something you just said that's so key is self-awareness, and the ability to be self-aware and jumping into a process like this is so important because you're understanding your strengths and your weaknesses, and you can lean into your strengths and build a team around your weaknesses, right? And even though your approach of just jumping into property management, that's not something I would do, right? For me, because of my own self-awareness, I would hire someone and I will learn from them first, and then I would do it. But for someone like you, that's already kind of done your own due diligence with research, and you kind of, you move a certain way and think a certain way that you feel comfortable and confident to, approach it that way, that works for you. So I think this is also a good note for anyone that's watching, that you have to be self-aware that everything that Dagmawi is sharing, you take it with a grain of salt and you assess yourself and what you're trying to do, and you apply what works and you leave out what doesn't work for you. So I think that's important for anyone to know, that there's not a linear way to approach buying a rental property, right? We're just sharing experiences and our own moments of self-awareness and how we've been able to adjust through the real estate game. So I'm glad that you shared that, the idea of self-awareness and looking at property management. Just for a quick note, how much how much of a percentage do property managers usually take, for like a rental property?
I mean, it can go from 5% to 10%. Again, depends. It depends on the property.
Yeah.
When you have a multi-unit, what connected, so they have to technically manage as only once. So it should be okay.
Okay. So if you're looking at getting a property manager, that needs to be calculated within your cash flow as well, like, of your profit margin, because that's going to take away from your profit as well. So keep
True.
I guess that's a good calculation to kind of keep in mind if that's the direction anyone is trying to go with property management. Now, one thing that I've seen, again, you've been my roommate, in California. So I've seen you kind of buy your first property out there and do a lot of renovations. And I've seen you hire contractors, and I've seen things go well and things not go so well. And I know you've learned the process of like working with contractors, and I work with contractors all the time with real estate now. And, I start seeing, I've been able to be blessed to find my people now, but it takes a while, right? What advice would you give to someone that, is buying a property, is trying to build that super team around them, but they're looking for someone that can do renovations for units? Where do you look? How do you find good quality contractors, and how do you pay them? That's huge.
So pretty much, as you said, when I had a property in LA, I had an example of, I had a contractor just walk on me in the middle of work. Good thing is I kind of knew that work, so I ended up actually finishing the work myself. But it can be a very challenging part of the process. So the first way I would start was just asking people around. In this process, is nobody's an expert in certain things. So it's always to let people know what you do. And then within that environment, they will start connecting you with different people. And so having that network of people, like let's just say if you're good with your property, let somebody who help you buy the property, they can also get you somebody who help you, maintain the property.
Your real estate agent. Yep. Have great trusted connections and relationships. That's good.
Yeah. So once you have that relationship, and then you can build on that. And then once you have one person comes in, does the carpets, and then that person might know somebody that does painting. But once you evaluate their work, hopefully they're bringing the right people for you. It's a learning process for sure. But once you have a good people, you got to make sure you take care of them, and then they'll take care of you. So that's kind of the process that I follow.
How do you pay contractors, and how do you take care of them? What does that look like for you?
So as far as contractors, I pay contractors based on their work, as far as how much percentages of work they've done. So if they've done 20% of our work, and then I pay them 20% of what they're doing. I try control as far as material. I try it by myself. Then that doesn't then I know exactly what has been spent.
So you
But
separate,
so,
so you separate costs with materials and labor, right?
yep, I try to separate both. Then if I need to go buy the material, I might even go buy the material with them. And then as far as labor, as they do their work, majority of the time I have an idea what they're doing, and just generally speaking, so I can actually assess where they are in the process and how far they are, and then pay them based on that term.
Love it, love it. Yeah, that's usually something that's very complex if you're looking on how to navigate paying contractors, and you want to build a team eventually, right? Because
Yeah.
hopefully, if you're jumping into real estate, if this is your passion, you want to be able to create a sustainable model of people, partnerships, and resources around you that you can take on with you from one project to the next. And I've seen the benefits of just having that done over and over throughout the process. So that's definitely been beneficial to think about long term versus short term of how you go about that process. Do you have any specific tips on someone? We talked about a lot of things. We talked about buying, to looking at the financial part of it, to renovations, to looking at contractor work and what that looks like, how to identify good deals for properties. Do you have anything else to add as far as tips on what would be beneficial for someone just watching that's looking to buy their first rental property that we may not have mentioned so far?
I think we pretty much covered everything. But yeah, so I think the only thing I could say is definitely try to get people that understand the business a little bit. It's not the same as buying a single home. Um, yeah, you do a little bit of research for sure, as far especially when it comes to understanding about what's the cash flow and how those property will benefit you. Because if you don't do it and you just buy it as just like a single home, then there might be other issues that you might come across. But overall, I think we've covered everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for giving us your time and sharing tips on buying your first rental property. For everyone that's watching, I hope this was beneficial for you. This is where the conversation starts, but it does not end. So continue doing your own due diligence with research, education, and connecting with people that you know around you that are doing these things so you can learn. And hopefully this conversation will definitely benefit and improve your life, because this is a great way to provide generational wealth for your family, for your community, to empower the people around you. And so I find real estate very valuable. Thank you again. We do appreciate you.